Hello and thanks for tuning in. I'm Holly Shields, welcoming you all to another edition of Kalkine TV's Executive Corner Expert Talks. Today we're taking a deep dive into the eSports industry, which is one that's always ahead of the curve in terms of new tech and digitization, of course. But for brands to capitalize on this space, they need detailed analysis of eSports teams, streamers, games, and events to inform gaming sponsorship and advertising decisions. And that's exactly where Geek comes in. They support clients in identifying key opportunities and providing expertise to engage every gamer. And joining us today to shed some light on the industry and Geek's crucial work is Charles Hambro, the CEO and co-founder. Welcome to the show, Charles. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Pleasure to have you on. Now, first of all, I've got to ask, how does Geek help the world's top brands optimize the ever-growing gaming industry and its audience?
Well, I think many brands are interested in reaching this space, and the first thing they think about is kind of, what are my objectives and why should I get involved? They know they need to get involved, but they don't know what their objectives are. So I think firstly, we help them define what their objectives are. And then, because there are so many ways to get involved, you can sponsor esports teams, you can partner with tournaments, you can work with streamers, you can even get involved with games and put your brand inside these games. I think the fundamental point of Geek is to look at the industry as a whole and find out what opportunities match your objectives you set out. So really, that's the way Geek helps, is we know that brands know who their audience demographics are. We know they have a certain reach. The question is what teams, tournaments, games, and individuals are going to match those objectives.
Right, very good point there. It's obviously crucial to understand exactly which market they're investing in there. And, as well, there's obviously, it sounds like a lot of creative opportunity for these brands. As you mentioned, there's many ways in which they can get involved with these esports companies. I'd like to ask you as well, though, what in your opinion is the huge appeal of the esports space for these brands?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think for a lot of brands, to be culturally relevant is very, very important. And I suppose when we're looking at esports and gaming, it is now something that is leading mainstream culture. We're starting to see gaming IP seep its way into Hollywood. Even music artists are starting to use gaming IP to bolster their careers. Esports itself is something that has grown dramatically over a long period of time, and I think if we look at brands getting involved in the digital space, we went from print advertising to social media in the late 90s and then early noughties. And now we're moving into this space where gaming has not become not been a solitary experience as it's been previously. It's now become a social experience. So a lot of these brands, really, the big appeal is to reach this audience, which isn't traditionally watching television. They're not even spending time in traditional social media. They're actually spending a lot of time in these gaming environments. And I suppose the appeal is to reach them in a way that they can't reach them in other traditional means of social media.
I think you're quite right there. There's, obviously gaming is a massive cultural phenomenon that, can be, of course, quite hard to tap into if you don't have that expertise there as well. Could you maybe actually give us an idea of what kind of brands are looking to tap into this industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and a lot of the brands that Geek works with multiple brands across multiple different sectors, but the real early adopters have been obviously the traditional hardware brands that sell computer gear and headphones and consumer electronics. I believe they were the sort of first brands to really cotton onto this early, because these gamers need hardware in order to play games. But now what we're seeing is a huge shift where actually a lot of fashion brands are starting to get involved in this space. And again, for fashion brands, being culturally relevant is very, very important. So aligning with this audience, which is driving mainstream culture, is very important. But then also from especially an in-game perspective, generating a new revenue stream through digital goods is a whole new market for a lot of these brands. And essentially, you know, when you're in a game, you have an avatar. And the way these players express themselves is through the clothes that they wear in these games. So I think fashion brands have started to look at this and go, oh, there's you know, not only an opportunity to reach a new audience here, there's also an opportunity to create a new revenue stream through digital goods.
I think you're exactly right there. And I suppose it'd be fair to say that the introduction of the metaverse has, you know, in a sense, accelerated this massive market for digital wearables. And, you know, obviously it's much more immersive than traditional gaming. Is that fair to say?
Well, absolutely. When we talk about the metaverse, it's many different things to different people. And Mark Zuckerberg changing his company name from Facebook to Meta is very interesting and has certainly accelerated interest in this space. When we look at how a brand activates and what the metaverse is, it's really a place where people play, they buy, they work, and they socialize. And in all practical reality right now, these immersive digital environments, the largest immersive digital environments are games. And they're social games, like Roblox, for example. I think if we're looking at what environments are closest to the metaverse, those games like Roblox are actually closest to the metaverse, because people aren't just going in there to play, they're actually going in there to socialize. But there's a really important point. You know, traditionally on social platforms, you have Facebook advertising, you have Google AdWords if you want to get into YouTube. But really, when it comes to these digital environments, the business model is not an advertising business model. The game developers are making money directly from the consumers, from the players. So in a funny way, they don't really need brands. It's sort of closer to a Netflix model where you're paying $10 a month to access the content. In this case, it would be gaming content. So the question a brand needs to ask itself is how can I enrich the experience? Because if I'm watching Netflix and paying $10 a month for that, I really don't want to see an advert.
Right, I think you're quite right there, very much on the money with that. It is a tricky thing, I imagine, with the advertising, because it is a new digital model, the metaverse. And you know, it's very understandable this has shifted brands' focus as well, because it is shaping up to be $1 trillion industry even. So it's, you know, I can imagine quite imperative for them to get on board with this new shift.
Yes, I believe that was a report that came out by one of the large banks. I can't remember which one it was, JP Morgan, I think. But yes, absolutely, it's a huge opportunity. But one needs to be very, very careful when entering, and actually having your finger on the pulse on all the different data points is really the most important part when it comes to this. There are so many different, you know, there's not one metaverse. There are so many different options. It could be Fortnite, it could be Roblox, it could be these decentralized platforms like the Sandbox or Decentraland. The question is who's in these environments, and how do you authentically connect with them?
Very well said there. I think that's exactly right. And just to actually circle back to Geek's clientele there, could you maybe shed some light for us on your engagement and popularity scores?
Yes, well, that's a very, very useful tool that we use internally, obviously, because we're comparing so many different types of opportunities, be it influencers, eSports teams, tournaments, games themselves. Popularity and engagement scores allow us to compare those different types of opportunities together, so that when a brand is weighing up whether I should sponsor an influencer or sponsor an eSports team, because those are two very different entities, we use these scores to be able to contrast and compare how engaged that opportunity is, or how engaged the audience is with that opportunity, and how popular that opportunity is. Engagement would be very much based on social media stats across all the major social media channels. You know, how many people are liking what they're doing, how many people are commenting, how many people are viewing. And then popularity is more akin to sort of player base and growth, social growth. So is this an opportunity that is losing followers and becoming less and less popular, and people are playing this game less and less? Or is it an opportunity that's actually growing and it's the sort of hot new thing?
Right. I can imagine those two points are obviously very crucial there. Are there any other criteria you look at aside from popularity scores and engagement?
There's all types of criteria that, and it all comes down to the objective. As always, when doing brand activations, I think, you know, some brands have very, very particular audiences that they want to reach. So it might be particular audience demographics before you've even started, which is, you know, what's the gender split of this opportunity? What's the age range of the audience that is following this opportunity? What's the income level? And again, very, very importantly, what's the geography of this audience? All these different esports teams, tournaments, and games have actually different geographies. A game like Zepeto will be very big in Asia, whereas a game like Fortnite might be much bigger in the West. And then finally, you have brand affinity, which is something that one really needs to look at. And that's really about saying, does this audience already have some alignment with the consumer category I'm in, be it fashion and beauty or automotive?
Yes, I can imagine that's very important as well. And it does obviously depend on the sectors and the industries of these brands, I can imagine.
Yeah.
So I think you're definitely quite right there when it comes to all these different criteria. And, you know, as well, I'd like to ask you what we can look forward to seeing from Geek in the coming year in 2022. Do you have anything on the horizon that we can keep an eye out for?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're growing very, very fast, and there are more and more brands that want to use our data to engage with the gaming and esports audience. I think what we're seeing a huge shift over the last 6 months is in the digital goods space, particularly the NFT market. And so what Geek is going to be doing over the next year is actually extending that market intelligence to go just not just stay within the gaming and esports space, but to start to do market intelligence beyond gaming and esports into the metaverse sphere. And that will include blockchain-based data, branded NFTs, branded digital goods, and the data surrounding that.
That's incredible to hear. It's definitely a brave new world out there for you, and it does sound like you have your work cut out there for you, especially with the boom of NFTs. It's a lot of funding there, and a very lucrative position, I must say.
Very important for brands that have an objective to create a new community and to create a new revenue stream, for sure. Absolutely.
Well, we definitely look forward to seeing that everything Geek has in store for the coming year and beyond that. But with that said, it's been really great to hear from you today, Charles. Thanks very much for joining us on Executive Corner Expert Talks.
Thanks very much for having me.
Pleasure to have you on. Thanks for your time as well, viewers. If you've just joined us, that was Charles Hambro, the CEO and co-founder of Geek. They're doing some fascinating work in this space, so keep an eye out. And as we say here, stay apprised and invest wise with Kalkine. I'm Holly Shields for Kalkine Media.